In the second year after the children of Israel came out of Egypt, they were encamped at the foot of Mount Sinai. The law had been given, the covenant had been made. The tabernacle stood at the center of the camp, and the glory of the Lord dwelt within it. This was a time of formation, when a nation of slaves was learning to become a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. But holiness is not learned easily, and sometimes the cost of that education is steep. The story I am about to tell you is recorded in the book of Leviticus, chapter 24. It is the account of a man who blasphemed the name of the Lord and what happened to him. But it is more than that. It is a story about identity, about justice, about the terrible and beautiful holiness of God. There was a woman in the camp named Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. She had a son, the scripture does not give us his name, whose father was an Egyptian man. Think about what this means. This young man had lived his entire life between two worlds. Born to an Israelite mother, yes, but marked by his father's heritage. In Egypt, he would have been seen as mixed, impure, and here in Israel, the same. Always an outsider, always having to prove he belonged. One day, this son of Shelomith was in the camp among the Israelites, and he got into a fight with an Israelite man. In the heat of that fight, something terrible happened. The son of Shelomith blasphemed the name. Not just any curse, not just angry words. He spoke the sacred name of God, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, the name that means I am who I am, and he reviled it. The Hebrew text uses two words, nakab, which means he pronounced it clearly, specified it, and kalal, which means he cursed it, treated it with contempt. Everyone who heard it knew immediately what had happened. The name, the holy, ineffable name that represented the very presence and character of God, had been blasphemed.
They seized him. They brought him to Moses, and then they waited. Why did they wait? Because this was unprecedented. Yes, the people knew that God's name was holy. They had heard the third commandment, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain." But what did that mean in practice? What was the punishment for blasphemy? The law had specified punishments for murder, for adultery, for Sabbath breaking. But this specific case, a man who had blasphemed the name during a fight, had not been addressed. Moses did not know what to do. So they put the man in custody, and Moses did what he always did when the law was unclear. He inquired of the Lord. Imagine being that man, sitting in custody, knowing what you had done. Perhaps the anger had already faded. Perhaps you were looking at the faces of those who heard you, Israelites who would never let you forget that your father was Egyptian. Perhaps you were thinking, is this how it ends? Will I finally be cast out completely? And imagine being Shelomith, his mother. She had carried this child in Egypt. She had survived as an Egyptian woman in a foreign land. She had somehow ended up with an Egyptian man. We don't know if by choice or by force. And she had raised this son to know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now her son's life hung in the balance, and she could do nothing but wait. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, and what he said was clear and terrible. Bring out of the camp the one who has cursed. Let all who heard him lay their hands on his head, and let all the congregation stone him to death. But God didn't stop there. He gave a law, a statute for all generations. Whoever curses his God shall bear his sin, and whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him, the sojourner as well as the native, when he blasphemes the name, shall be put to death. Do you hear what God said? The sojourner as well as the native. This is crucial. This young man, this son of an Egyptian father, could have been executed simply for being an outsider, for being different. But that's not what happened. God declared that the same law applies to everyone, foreign-born or native-born. The standard is identical. In blasphemy, there is no distinction based on heritage. This is justice, terrifying justice, but equal justice. Moses emerged from the tabernacle and announced God's verdict. The man would die, but he would die under the same law that would apply to any Israelite. He was not being punished for being half Egyptian. He was being held to the same standard as everyone else. In that moment, as strange as it sounds, he became fully one of them.
They took him outside the camp. This was significant. Execution happened outside the camp because death brings uncleanness, and the camp where God dwells must remain holy. But there's something else. Outside the camp is where the alienated go, the lepers, the unclean, and now the blasphemer. The witnesses came forward, those who had heard him curse the name, and they laid their hands on his head. This wasn't a blessing, it was a testimony. They were saying, "We heard it, we bear witness. This judgment is on him, not on us." Then the entire congregation picked up stones. Why the entire congregation? Why not just the witnesses, or the elders, or Moses himself? Because blasphemy is a communal sin. It affects everyone. When God's name is dishonored, the holiness of the entire camp is threatened. So the entire community must participate in re-establishing that holiness. Every person who picks up a stone is saying, "We are a people who honor God's name. We will not tolerate its desecration." I imagine the young man standing there. Perhaps he thought of his mother. Perhaps he thought of his Egyptian father, whoever he was. Perhaps he thought about his whole life spent trying to belong, and how he would die finally being treated as an equal in judgment, if not in acceptance. The stones began to fly. The text is brief, and the people of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. They brought out of the camp the one who had cursed and stoned him with stones. Thus the people of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. He died outside the camp, and his death became a permanent teaching for all Israel.
But the passage doesn't end there. Immediately after recording this execution, the text gives us more laws. And these laws are crucial for understanding what just happened. God says, Whoever takes a human life shall surely be put to death. Whoever takes an animal's life shall make it good, life for life. If anyone injures his neighbor, as he has done, it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And then you shall have the same rule for the sojourner and for the native, for I am the Lord your God. Why give these laws right here? Why place them immediately after the account of the blasphemer? Because God is teaching Israel about justice, about proportionality, about equality. The principle is simple but profound. The punishment must fit the crime, and the law must apply to everyone the same way. This wasn't arbitrary cruelty. This was a nation learning that God is holy, truly, dangerously, magnificently holy, and that His holiness demands boundaries. So, what do we take from this? First, God's name is not casual. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, to know someone's name was to have access to them, even power over them. When God revealed His name to Moses at the burning bush, He was making Himself known. He was granting intimacy. The name represents God's character, His presence, His very being. To blaspheme the name is not merely to use crude language. It is to treat God Himself with contempt. It is to take the gift of intimacy and throw it back in His face. Second, holiness requires boundaries. We live in a time when boundaries are often seen as restrictive or arbitrary. But boundaries are what make meaningful relationship possible. Without them, everything becomes permissible, and when everything is permissible, nothing is sacred. The Israelites had to learn that God is not like the gods of Egypt or Canaan, manipulable, capricious, subject to human control. He is other. He is holy, and approaching Him requires reverence. Third, equal justice matters. The same law for foreigner and native-born. This was radical. In the ancient world, foreigners had no rights. They could be exploited, enslaved, killed with impunity. But Israel's God declared, "Not so with you." The same standard applies to everyone. The son of Shelomith died under the same law that protected every Israelite. He was not treated as less, and that is both terrifying and beautiful.
Fourth, and this may be the most important point, this event reveals the tension at the heart of biblical faith. God is both transcendent and immanent, both holy and near, both just and merciful. He is so holy that to blaspheme His name requires death, yet He is so concerned with justice that He ensures the law applies equally to everyone. He is so transcendent that the name must be guarded, yet He is so immanent that He gives the name in the first place, making Himself known. This tension runs throughout Scripture, and it's never fully resolved until we get to the New Testament, where we see another man executed outside the camp, another man who bore the sins of the people, another man who was treated as cursed, so that those who trust in Him might be declared righteous. But that's another story, though perhaps not unrelated to this one.
The man's body was buried. Shelomith mourned her son. Life in the camp continued. But something had changed. From that day forward, every Israelite knew, the name of the Lord is holy. It is not to be used carelessly. It is not to be invoked lightly. It represents the one who delivered them from Egypt, who dwells among them, who is shaping them into his people. Centuries later, Jewish tradition would develop elaborate practices around the name. They would avoid pronouncing it except in specific liturgical contexts. They would write it as DD to avoid accidental desecration. Some would say these practices went too far, that they created a distance God never intended. But perhaps they remembered this story. Perhaps they remembered what happened to the son of Shelomith. And perhaps they decided that reverence, even excessive reverence, was better than contempt. The story stands as a permanent reminder. God is holy, His name is holy, and a people who bear His name must learn to honor it in their speech, in their conduct, in their very lives. This is the account of the blasphemer, as recorded in Leviticus 24. It is a difficult story, a troubling story, but it is a true story, true in its recording, true in its teaching, true in what it reveals about the God who is both terrible and beautiful in His holiness.